Thanks for joining us in today's episode as we take a deeper dive into the Abundance Experiment series, where we explore the journey of poverty consciousness all the way to abundance and prosperity consciousness and everything in between. Today's show, we have such a special guest. She is actually our kickoff guest for the entire series and the entire podcast. She is my very dear friend, Nicole Koestel. Her and I met about 3 years ago and have been on such an amazing adventure of conscious exploration, of friendship, and exploring the nature of reality, consciousness, entrepreneurship, finding our path, finding our way. But it all started with some seeds that got planted 3 years ago around abundance. In fact, these seeds were so powerful that the ones that she shared with me back then, which she's going to share with all of you today, actually completely transformed my own journey and my own experience of prosperity, and more specifically on my favorite topic of money and the energetics of money and everything that comes with it. In fact, as you'll hear in the episode, money is an energy and it is a tool, and it's a mirror for us to see ourselves more deeply. And it's a way for us almost to see ourselves outside of ourselves when it comes to our self-worth and our value and our energy management. So I invite you to continue to watch this series as we really dive deep in exploring this topic and many others. But I'm so grateful for you to get a chance to meet Nicole. And it's an episode that you really don't want to miss. She is going to give you a lot of key takeaways and brilliant nuggets of inspiration and wisdom that rewrote her money story and helped me rewrite my own, and will help you rewrite yours. So thanks so much for joining us in today's episode. And here we go. Welcome back, Envisionaries, to the Dream into Being podcast, where mind science, transformational psychology, and magic all merge into one. If you're ready to dream again and transcend the inertia of what you've known, then I invite you to join me, your host and Envisioneer, Kat Divine, in expanding the boundaries of your own Fantasia by remembering that you are the master you've been waiting for. So welcome, Nicole. I'm so happy that you are here. And first of all, thank you so much for doing this. So just FYI to all of our listeners, this is round 2. I actually made her record an audio only version and then decided I wanted to put us on camera. So she is such a ride or die girlfriend, and she is here with us today to hopefully really change your understanding of what's possible and to bring a little bit of hope and imagination and enchantment into your life. So what I want to do is, instead of starting off by giving everybody a bio of who you are, I would love for us to do like a mini brag session. Of course, and I'm going to start it off with you and just give you some space to absolutely celebrate yourself and just brag about some of the accomplishments that you have experienced specifically in your own abundance experiment. And then we'll come back and I'll wrap it up and we'll head on to the conversation.
That sounds so good. Well, first I will say you also left out something that I'll call myself out on, and I don't think this is a brag at all, but I'm also re-recording this because I cuss too much. And so I'm a little sassy, a little Southern. I just, so sorry in advance. I'm going to keep those F-bombs to the minimum.
And I can do the sound effects, so it's all good.
Oh, fart noise, please. Over.
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay, bragging through the lens of abundance. I love this. I was telling you this a couple minutes ago, but when I do stop and think about it, I realize, and I have over the past couple years where things have really deepened in my own awareness of abundance, that I am a really pretty great manifester. And sometimes that works in my favor and sometimes that isn't. And we can get more into that of like our awareness of what our thoughts are doing, what our beliefs are. But I would say more often than not, I do get versions of what I am desiring or hoping to align with. So I will say that's pretty cool. It's completely changed how I approach shifting my life or going after things that I want. I've made more money than I could handle, so I lost the money. Like, to me, that's a both like double-edged sword, but that was a really cool experience that I learned from. We could talk more about that, but and just the abundance of just love. And I think it'll be important to hit on that abundance is financial, but it also can be so much more and is so much more depending on where you'd like to put that perspective. But I'm just really blessed and I'm really held. And the more I've surrendered to a larger creator impact or influence, and I say creator, just whatever your belief is that's out there, versus my own ego, and learning how to dance within that has made my life easier. But it also doesn't come with the surrender walk and the trust and all that muscle building. So I don't know if that's like a boring brag, but through the lens of abundance, that's just what came up.
I love it. And I'm going to go ahead and finish off that brag session.
Okay.
Because you already know this, you're one of my favorite humans that is walking planet Earth. You came into my life at just like that magical moment where back in 2020, I just knew it was time. Like, it was just time to change my life and let go of some of the old stories. And one of the stories that I walked with for the majority of my life, well over 40 years, was the poverty consciousness story. Yeah. And it really, again, it's like such an amazing thing to have that as an experience to learn from and as a bridge to reach out to more people. So I'm forever grateful for that. However, there came a moment where I knew this is a consciousness thing. This is not like behaviors and actions. Those come later. And it was truly, how do we see ourselves? And in walks Nicole into my life. And what a godsend, because up until that point, truly, I had never had anybody willing to talk to me about money. I was probably obsessed with it when I was like 5 years old, just really fascinated by like, what is this thing that everybody wants that nobody will talk about? And it infiltrates so many parts of our life, yet it's such a mystery. And I will tell you, that was such a pain point for me in my whole existence, because I'm finding that my dharma, as well as yours, is so entangled with abundance, prosperity, resources, and shifting this consciousness so that we can all just take care of ourselves better and those that we love, and globally at some point. So you really were that person for me to completely open up the possibilities that were available. And I think what I loved about your approach so much is there was like just no energy on the fact that I was going through what I was going through. There was just so much like space to be authentic and vulnerable and real. And then there was also no guilt or shame when you would share these incredible manifestations. And I remember you even told me at one point, I hope this doesn't trigger you, but X, Y, and Z happened this year. And I was like, trigger me. That may as well be the best news I've ever heard. Because to find out that my bestie is commanding that amount of abundance from the universe just completely reorganized what I thought was possible. So I just want to thank you so much for that, because it really changed my life, and it really put me on this course. It put me on this course that, one of my intentions for this show that and that I'll share with the audience, is again to normalize these things, because the only reason we have any fear about anything is simply because we don't understand it. And so having that bridge of understanding and communication that you offered to me, wow, it was just like, oh, you can read all the books that you want, you can watch all the podcasts that you want, but until you have somebody in front of you that is a peer that can show you that it is possible for you, there's just such a like dissonance of thinking that it's even possible. So any of you who don't know my personal story yet, I do have a video up that you can go watch, and I just kind of walk you through what the last 3 years of my life has been. And I'll tell you what, it can change so quickly. It's so wonderful. And that's why I'm so grateful and so excited that Nicole is here with us today, because she's actually like our official kickoff call and recording for not only the Abundance Experiment series, but for the entire podcast. So just, this is so amazing to me that here we are, coming back.
It's incredible.
So I'm going to hand it off to you next. And what I would love for you to share with our listeners today is just painting a picture of, where did you start? Where were some of your money wounds? What was your consciousness like when you started this journey? And then maybe bridging over into what the transition was and what was created as a result.
Yes. First, I just want to say I love you so much. And everyone listening, Kat has equally been an expander for me or more. And we will get to that at a whole other topic, but she is a phenomenal embodiment of empowerment, her own manifestation. And it's been just such a thrill. And like, I feel like, not even saying anything negative around myself, but it's like, you've skyrocketed, or I was going to say, like, you've ran circles around me with like how much I feel like your life has shifted. I guess maybe in more of like the difference of how I met you and where you are now. And I think we always look at our own self as like, oh, I'm not as where I'm supposed to be or where I want to be, but you're incredible. And I can't wait for your audience just to get to know you better, and just everyone. And you truly have such an impact. So thank you for, I just realized my dog is underneath my desk and I touched its furry face because it's thundering. Yeah, it's so cute. So anyways, thank you. Love you. Happy to be here. Okay. So I grew up, like in a pretty regular middle-class family, in the 90s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, when I was getting all of my indoctrination of life and beliefs and, what things are and aren't from society and parents and school and stuff like that, just to give you a timeline. And I went to Catholic school. My dad owned his own construction company. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I had a younger brother and then a sister 10 years older than me that was living at her mom's, just doing her own thing. So I kind of grew up as the oldest child. And I was just, I was taught about like, work hard for your money. Money doesn't grow on trees. If you want something, you got to earn it. So I think because my dad came from a dad who had his own company and he started his own company, and you just, as you know, and any other entrepreneur listening, it's like, no one's doing it for you. And so you really got to make everything happen for yourself. And so I really appreciate that hard work and that ethic of doing that. And I remember telling you this prior, but one thing I'm really grateful for is that, growing up and when I was starting to get allowance and stuff like that, and I wanted to get my first, like, I don't know if it was a Walkman, like a CD Walkman, or it was a CD player. Again, I gave you the timelines, everyone, warning. Yeah. Technology that literally doesn't exist anymore. Dad was like, cool. love it. I don't know what it was, $30. That was probably
Mhm.
maybe like equivalent of, who knows, 50 or 60 now.
Yeah.
But he's like, how bad do you want it? I will meet you at half. And as someone who's making, I don't know, $3 a week, I don't know, an allowance, it was like, all right, save your money. How do you want it?
Right.
So it's just stuff like that. And I remember when I was 11 or 12 and I couldn't have a real job yet, I would draw my own flyers and decorate them and say what I was available for. And I would go,
Oh,
it would be like
cool.
pulling weeds or like
Yeah.
taking your animals for a walk or just babysitting. But I think that was my little entrepreneurial flair of just, I think one thing that's coming to mind that was a layer on that. I saw that money also gave you options. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I
Yeah.
was my kind of the entrepreneurship and then kind of like, oh, I'm 11, 12, 13. I'm starting to want stuff, and so
Yeah.
like, and how can I contribute to that? So I would say overall, I had pretty decent upbringing about money. I'm going to try to think of any shadows. I think I would say just the basic shadows of trade time for money.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only really go, the ceiling is how much time you have to give in a day, is how much there's a ceiling to what you can earn. Money doesn't, it's not easy to make money. You got to do
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I, I definitely respect the reciprocity, like the energy exchange to receive something.
Yeah.
But I think we're so much worthy and it can be so much more worthy. And I think nowadays we're obviously seeing that it's so much easier than we have been led to believe in the past.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I started off with a decent, I believe, like baseline for money.
Mhm. Awesome. And then fast forward us into now you're out in the world
Mm-hmm.
pursuing your dreams, living the life in New York. And I know that's kind of where the awareness started to creep up that maybe there were some shadows that were
Oh
participating in
gosh.
ways that you didn't love. So if you can kind of paint
Mm-hmm.
that picture for the audience so that they can just like transport them into that moment in your life, because I guarantee you're going to speak to so many people that hear this because that's just where
Mm-hmm.
they are right now.
Well, I'm so glad you asked that because although I just said I had a good baseline with money and that I wasn't in anybody else's story around that it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
I also wasn't taught, and this isn't a knock on my parents, but even just the school system, like
Mm-hmm.
budgeting, or how to balance things, or just financial health and financial literacy, I will say.
Right.
So I think that's getting better, but I did not have that strong of a baseline for that. So fast forward, it was always my dream to work in New York City. I work in advertising. It was a dream of mine since I was 18. I've worked really hard to do that. That was it. I would have been successful if I work in New York City. And I did it. And in
Yes.
order for me to do it, I had to take out $100,000 loan
Oh
to
man.
go to ad school, which at the time I was in Nashville at a small ad agency and just still trying to break in. And anyway, this ad school kind of allowed me to learn what I needed to learn, network how I needed to network, and it panned out. But I did have to take out this amount of money. And I remember when I was applying for it, my dad was really trying to help me understand how much money 100 grand was. And in my 24-year-old brain, I was just like, yeah, I get it. And then, whatever the monthly payments were, I was like, oh, well, I'll have a job by then
Yeah.
and that'll be easy. And so
Yeah.
I didn't fully grasp. So fast forward, I um, got a job. I graduated, got a job making $55,000 in New York City, 2011 maybe. And it was not a lot of money.
Mm.
And my loan started pretty immediately. And I remember my loan payments were almost the same amount as my rent payment. And I was maybe
Oh.
like netting three to four, I don't know, a month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyways, and it just like, I very quickly learned I am in deep shit here. Like, I'm going into more debt every single month. And then I started using credit cards, and then really struggling like every single purchase. And then you just kind of numb yourself to it. And you're like, well, I guess this is what everyone does to live here. And, or I don't want to give up. I'll worry about the money part later, or I'll get a new job soon, or I deserve this bottomless mimosa brunch because life is hard and New York is hard. So I'm going to spend 30, 40, $50 that I didn't have. And it was, I was aware, but I was definitely like head in the sand, and it was like a later me problem until the later me met that, and that was a very big oh shit moment. So I was in New York for about 5.5 years, and so I was building up. I was going more into debt. I was paying, as everyone else who has loans, who's listening in or has had that experience, paying the minimum, and then that's mostly going towards interest and not really the principal. So it was just you just get so lost, and you get so pissed, and you get so helpless, and you get so hopeless, like so many Americans and students are and currently have been or have in their life, of like, how do you deal with student debt? And you kind of just, I remember going through acceptance of like, well, I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. Will I ever get rid of it? And it kind of, you just have to make peace with it, even though it kind of really bothers you because it's heavy. Heavy. Because you're taught that you're supposed to save and have all of this like the future you, and invest and I'm like, where does this disposable income come in so you can save for your future self, or even if you want to go on a trip, or even I couldn't even fathom my future self. I was just thinking about the next paycheck, to be honest.
Well, and then, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that with so much clarity, because I could feel it. Like that was not me very long ago, and I still have some of those things to work out. So I completely relate to that feeling of like, it's like this passive acceptance of like, I don't even know that I have any power over this, so I'm just going to ignore it. And unfortunately, what we don't realize is the cost of that is not just ignoring that debt, but the cost of it is us understanding our power and our magnetism and our capacity to create. So that's the bigger lesson here, you guys. Like, just keep in mind, yes, we're using the language of money. We're talking about numbers and finances. But one thing that I'm finding to be very fascinating is that it is just like you share all the time, Nicole. It's just energy. It is just a tool for us to actually witness ourselves. Like it doesn't, making more money doesn't solve all of our problems. It just creates more opportunities, like you say, but it's a huge magnifying glass of who we already are. So that's what I love about this next piece of your story, where I think you said you went home and, was sharing this, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like the sense of feeling like a victim to the circumstance with your dad. And I loved his response. So if you can just share with the audience what happened in that conversation.
Totally. I had been in a really dark spot. I think looking back, I would say would be one of the first experience of like a dark night of the soul. I was turning into somebody I didn't really like. Plus, like just being in the energetics of New York City with my sensitive Southern heart was just building up on top of the debt. And just, I was getting in victim mode. I was getting frustrated around, I couldn't get a new job as everyone else is getting a new job. Everyone else seems like they don't have to worry about money, but in reality, they were probably in the same situation I was. So it's just funny for hindsight. So I went home and was having a drink with my dad, and I was telling him, just kind of catching him up, and he kind of gave me some tough love that I really needed to. And I don't remember what he said exactly, but he reminded me that I was actually the creator of my own story. And so if I wanted to see what I wasn't liking in my life, to just ask myself how I've been contributing to that, and reminding myself that it's all in your, well, I will say mindset. I think that's more of the trendy word. And we know that there's other layers and things with that. But at the time, that's what it basically boiled down to. And it was very kind of liberating, because it got me out of this prison that was giving my power away.
Yeah.
But it was also really sobering. And of course, you get in these moments, like if somebody ever wants to, if you've ever, anyone who's listening has ever been in a situation where someone reflects that you're the creator of this, and you're like, what the heck? F you. No, I'm not. This is happening to me. You don't understand my story, whatever. And it's like, I get it. And I had to go through that with my own dad, or anybody. But I was able to be like, wow, okay. And then this moment, I knew that I had the power to shift that. And I knew it wasn't going to be overnight. But it was just so exciting, because I took the power back, and I said, all right. And then that is step one. And sometimes that can be a long step one. And then the step two, which can also seem overwhelming, is like, where the heck do I start? Okay, now what? Because then you're being asked to not maybe fully reverse, but just shift all of these things in your life that would end up making these conscious repatternings or whatever. But so that was a really good tough love convo with him, that like it was literally a pivotal point. Like timeline A, I was taking care of myself with victim, and then he introduced that, and I was like timeline B, and it just changed the trajectory of where I was going. So I was really grateful for that.
And how amazing that, we've talked about this before, that information comes to us all the time, but what a miracle that you had the ears to hear it, because it could have just been another conversation that didn't change anything, but something in you did awaken. And so first of all, bravo, because that is, like you said, that is step numero uno. Like there's nothing you can do before taking radical responsibility to change anything in our life. And so again, I think everything is sacred space, that like actually victimhood, I find so much beauty in that too, because it's like our chance to receive all the wounds that we are going to transmute and transcend. And that's our gifting in life. So I have so much space for that. However, there's something so profound and magical when somebody gets to that moment of choice. And what a powerful thing. So I know that from that point on, there was that shift, and you manifested somebody in your world to help you expand your mind. And so I would love for you to take us on that next leg of the adventure with you, and what maybe some of the key takeaways of what transformed in your consciousness to take you from poverty to abundance.
And I want to say one thing as I transition into that. It's, don't be afraid to speak your truth in situations where you really care about the person, and obviously do it in a kind way. But you never know when you're planting a seed, and you never know, they might not be able to hear what you're saying or receive it, but they might. And I don't know what seed was planted, but when my dad gave me that tough love, maybe it's because I love and respect my dad, maybe because he grew up listening to Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer. And so I had that in my body that I just literally forgot. I got so in my victim story and so mad at the world that I forgot. And so once he said that, I was able to make that choice after a little bit of not wanting to. I wanted someone else to fix it. But I say that to also say another quote my dad loves to say: when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yes.
And he was kind of that step one teacher, but So like I was saying earlier, okay, sure, I'll play the game. I'll take my responsibility back. I'll do this. I'm just like, okay, but like my life is still the same. How do I start making it feel different when nothing, my bank account hasn't, I still have the same job.
Yep.
So he reminded me about the law of attraction, which was a very, I don't say basic as bad, but I think it's a great place for people to start in terms of consciousness and ownership. And I think it's over the last several years has gotten a little trendy, good, bad, indifferent, depending on who you listen to, whatever. But it is about being able to align with the things that you want through quantum physics and how we're made of frequencies. So I literally just YouTubed law of attraction.
Wow.
And up comes Abraham Hicks. Thank God. They are a great place to start for anyone who is wanting to dive deeper on that. And I listened to a few videos. It really started to turn the wheels, and I just started listening. The YouTube algorithm was clearly listening and just kept sending me more stuff about law of attraction and types of conscious mindset stuff. And I'll tell you, that is something that really helped, was me literally, my music, like whatever I was watching, I was commuting on the subway like 2 hours a day or biking. It would just be like conscious stuff. So I was really being conscious of what I was ingesting to help even offset just my whole perspective of what I was taking in.
Brilliant.
And we can talk more about that in a moment, but that was a really key thing for me. So, and I, through the YouTube algorithm, anyway, it introduced me to this woman named Cassie, who was hosting a abundance workshop because she was on a podcast.
Wow.
I don't even remember the podcast. She was a guest, and she said she was hosting an abundance workshop for $1 because she figured that people who would take it didn't have money. And so the deal was you paid her 10% of whatever you manifested within the 90 days. So I said, well, what do I have to lose? And so I tried it, and, we would start doing these activities, like rewiring your brain activities. It was like, the classic, like vision board, but then we also had to do a video vision board, which I thought was really cool, that I added to my repertoire. And you also have history with making video vision boards. Writing down things, having to sidewalk, like just shop, even though you're not spending money. Like New York was great doing it, like going down, looking in the windows of the shops and being like, it doesn't matter what the price tag, and just be like, I want that. And just kind of getting yourself in the moment and getting yourself in the feeling of just being able to buy whatever you want. She had us, like, anytime we saw money on the ground, coins, pick it up, say, thank you, universe, for the abundance. And like, track that, because it doesn't matter if it was $100 or 1 cent or 20 cents. If you just say, I am so abundant, thank you, universe, like money literally falls in my lap. Like the universe is not keeping track. And so you're just building these muscles and expansion, and they're like receptor points, and the universe is like, oh, okay, you like this, I'm going to give you more of this. So it was just all of these like building blocks of different types of like workshops or activities that we had to do every day. And it really made a huge difference, because it really did shift. I was starting to see how much it did shift. And then I think by the time at the end of the course, I mean, there's so many stories that I forget now, right? It's been so long, but just incredible stories. And I think, it was like $4,000 in 90 days. And I think for somebody who is really just still making her job money, that was a lot. But again, you have to count like, oh, I got 20% off this, just like being able to like trick your brain on how you are abundant, or someone bought me coffee or whatever. And so, I ended up paying her $400. And I had a little bit of scarcity, like fear with that, but I was like, so tipped with pride and like empowerment doing that as well. So that was kind of my next step but I had to, like, I invested in myself. I was listening to things that was shifting my perspective. I was doing like group support through the workshop. I mean, it was a change of behavior and beliefs and what I was possible and worthy of. And you don't have to do it that way. And I certainly don't always do it that way either. But I was seeing really fast results in the smaller things for sure, doing it that way.
Yes. And for any of those of you who are really, really listening and dissecting what Nicole is sharing with you, she's hitting on such key points that if you can integrate these in your life, I think you might be like just profoundly excited by how your reality will manipulate itself and change form around you to match these inner alchemies that are happening. So she started with choice, so radical responsibility and taking her power back. And then the next step was immersion. And immersion is just like recommitting our energy and energy management to what are we consuming, and like immersing herself in prosperity and abundance consciousness itself, and then looking for evidence, starting to document things, starting to collect evidence that this new reality is true. And then that changes our biochemistry, which changes our electromagnetic field. That's a whole quantum physics conversation I'm sure we'll have later on, but these things work because of the nature of this reality. And then I think one of the other key points that you've shared is like the community aspect of like surrounding yourself with other people that are thinking the same way and acting the same way. And I'm telling you, that was definitely the key for me, because up until you and I meeting, all I had before that was information and nobody in real life other than, you know, people on YouTube that felt a million miles away to reflect back to me that it was a very real possibility. So those are just like a few of like the surface level things that we can do to start changing our story. But those are ground zero things. Like without those things in place, they're really, I don't know how somebody could do it. In fact, I've been in my own abundance experiment since probably I was 10 years old, just obsessed with this topic. But some of those key pieces were missing. And so there was such a gap between what I wanted and my reality because of those things. So just again, thank you, Nicole, one, for sharing your reality with me, and then now for sharing it with whoever, you know, is blessed to make contact with this information through this podcast, because you really, you, like you said, that's part of your dharma, and you are planting seeds, and to encourage our audience as well to do the same without any expectation of reward, but to plant those seeds, because they do take root and they will start to like have a ripple effect and start to change the collective consciousness. And in fact, this is what I am so excited about with this podcast and with all the series and episodes that are coming. My life has changed a lot in just like the last week or so, which I'll catch everybody up on later. But one thing I was really asking the universe of like, what is it that I can do to not only change my life, but to serve my purpose and to change the collective? And the answer was so awesome. It was to flood the airwaves with conscious conversation. And something about it just clicked, like, wait a second, if you start looking at cymatics and sound and frequency and vibration and form, the fastest way we could possibly change the collective would be to be broadcasting conscious conversations, flooding the airwaves. So that's part of the future vision of where this is all going, is to create more community, to network, to get all of our voices like speaking more and more and more, not from a place of being experts, but totally from a place of like humility and vulnerability of what we're just walking our path, we're just sharing our story, and that's it. And the power that that possesses is just really so profound. So I know that the next part of the story is just where it gets so juicy and so exciting, because you went from everything that you've shared to that transition point, and then what you've created since then has been like, again, nothing that I've ever seen in real life. I mean, how unfortunate is it that we're, living in one of the wealthiest nations on earth, and yet your story is so rare. So if you can just take us on that next leg of the journey, I think everybody's just chomping at the bit to hear what came next.
Yes. And you always say so many poignant things, and I'm always like, so I'm going to, and I don't want to speak over you. So let me just say a few things.
Yeah.
It is so true about not only conscious conversations, but just the frequency of sound and the power of sound. And I don't love that I'm going to say this, because I was like, oh, I've watched a show on Gaia. No, I don't know what show it was. No, I don't. But I remember them, and there are studies, and maybe one will ring a bell, but one person talking positively about something or someone, it can be recorded quantumly on the other side of something that has an impact. And that I know that's like really lame and high level, but there are, even just with the study of water, when you speak kindly into water, when you speak horribly into water, you can literally see how the vibration of those words positively or negatively impact. So can you imagine the collective when we're all just celebrating ourselves? And like you said, we're not experts, but just, I think more people will also, more people awaken, will just crave more conscious conversations and just real talk. So I think that's going to be really exciting. And so going back to my story, I will just tell you, everyone who is listening, kind of that from my dad's conversation to this workshop, it was like 4 months of really focused work. And I didn't make more money, but I had more money in my bank account. I was feeling lighter and freer, but like my physical life hasn't changed that much. I was still living in the same apartment, same job, same New York City, whatever. But I was feeling different. Yes. So then it was time for me to close the door on my New York chapter after 6 years. And I think this abundance journey really helped me. At that time, I made a decision to move to Seattle, Washington. I didn't know anybody there. I just felt that was where I needed to go. And so I packed everything up and moved out. And knowing I had the opportunity to recreate myself, and it was another expensive city. I have a really good, just was like, let's keep the challenge going. And, but it was incredible. I was making more money at this new job. I was starting to feel a little bit more hopeful. It's the first time I was ever living by myself in a 550 square foot apartment, super small. I don't know what I was paying for it, probably like $1,700 in Seattle in 2017. But it was my space, and I got to do with what I wanted. I was slowly like furnishing it. And I go to LA because I'm on the West Coast now. And I'm like, oh, I can visit my friends on the West Coast. It's so much easier. So I go to LA and visit my friend, and they told me that they had invested in something like 10 years ago, and it paid them back really well. They said they just got word that it was a successful investment and he was getting paid a lot of money. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And this friend was like, well, but I'm also very aware of your situation and how much you've been struggling with your student loan debt and New York and all of this stuff. And I would like to help contribute to paying your debt down, or give you some money to help pay for your debt. And I was like, what? It was really emotional. I was like, this friend is very generous, but I still, that's like above and beyond. And it's like, who does that? Who does that? Cause it wasn't like, oh, here's $1,000. It was like, how much credit card debt do you have? And I was like, so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed that I felt like he was going to shame me, because that alone had racked up to, I think, about $16,000 or $17,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember him being like, "Oh, okay, well, that's a little more than I thought." And then they offered to give, I think, pay, like, put $20,000 towards my student loans, and over the next couple of years, gave smaller increments towards it,
Wow.
and got it down to a really manageable thing. But I was like, oh, like, this might sound weird to people, but
Okay.
I was like, I did that. Well, I co-created that with
Right.
this person.
Right.
Yes, this person was the messenger. Yes, this person was the way in which this abundance came to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also created that. I also did the work to call that in, to clear space, to know that I'm worthy, to trust the universe that could come from anywhere.
Yeah.
And this person even said, I completely forgot about this investment. I thought it had failed because I hadn't heard anything in about a decade.
Wow.
And so they were just like also surprised because out of nowhere, they were notified that they had like tenfolded their investment.
Wow.
So I want that to be a lesson of like, I, I, I had to go through some like weird feelings of like kind of taking
Mm-hmm.
self-ownership and being okay and proud that that happened between the two of us, because we both were in alignment to give and receive with that. And so that was kind of the start of a big shifts in my life. I worked for a couple of years. Fast forward, I got laid off right before COVID. And that was really scary because even though I, at this point now, had disposable income and I was starting to save, I was starting to invest, not a lot, but enough to make me feel hopeful. And it was for the first time in my life when I was living in Seattle in about, I guess, 2018, I started to feel hopeful about my future. And I will never forget the night I was laying in bed and I was looking on my Mint. I think I was using that app Mint that tracked all your finances, that I was $2 in the green. My net worth was $2.
Yay.
And I know. But I like literally, I think I legit cried because I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not in debt anymore. And it is only up from here.
That's amazing.
So yeah. And there's no shame in that. And there's no shame in being a net worth of, you used to be $120,000. Now you're 80, now you're 60, now you're
Right.
negative 40. I
Yeah.
mean, it is all going in the right direction. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that tidbit out. $2. Nothing is like menial, like nothing
Right.
is, everything has a beauty and purpose. And if we are willing to look at it that way. So it really springboarded me. And in 2020, I got laid off right before COVID, like I was saying.
Yeah.
Definitely triggered more layers of fear, money. What am I going to do? Well, then we went into COVID and then I was like, oh, the whole world is shutting down. Great. Whatever. So then I had to remember, what? I am the creator of my own life. I am in charge. Yes, feel all the things.
Yeah.
There's good medicine in that. But what are you going to do about it? Like, you did this once, now is another iteration of the same story,
Yeah.
and to kind of just re-meet yourself and re-meet the situation. And I started doing this work called It's Totally Possible, and where I just think of all the possibilities. And it's through one of my favorite spiritual teachers. His name is Kyle Cease. He has greatly impacted my life in so many ways. And it just helps you get out of the limitations that our mind has because of whatever we've experienced before, whatever society tells us. And I was writing down 50 possibilities a day of what could happen, from getting a free coffee. I always say this, or it can be random. Like, today, it's totally possible. Today I'll see a green shirt that I like, or I find $50 on the street, or I get a call from a long lost friend, or there's no right or wrong. And it's just to get your mind open.
Yes.
And saying, yes, universe, I'm available to whatever beauty and threads that you're weaving up there that I can't see, because we have to remember that the universe is a much more creative creator than our human experience. And that plus some affirmations like I work less and make more. People want to hire me for my authentic self.
Yeah.
I think at that time, you and me were starting to do envisioneering sessions, or what we're turning into, where we just kind of dream forward about our life in 6 months or a year. And so fast forward a couple months into COVID, I got a freelance gig in advertising. Mm-hmm. And I've always heard how lucrative that could be. And I remember being like, how do I even price myself out? Like, I think that's just also something so interesting that a lot of us in the 9-to-5 world, because spoiler alert, I'm 9-to-5ers back into that game. Stay tuned. Like that's one mindset of like, oh, I know how much I'm worth salary wise. But when you're an entrepreneur and you're doing hourly and you're doing it all, you're like, how do I price myself out? Mm-hmm. That's really intimidating. And I also will say there's so many great resources out there, and don't hesitate to ask people, because I would straight up ask people, what's your number of like friends to like help me out. And so we can't be afraid to ask, and please let's not be afraid to share, because it's really going to help inform people, especially when they're doing something for the first time. Mm-hmm. So I was able to set my price at $130 an hour, which seems ridiculous, but it's also low in some degrees. And you can make my industry is really fun and hilariously lucrative. And I say hilariously, like it's freaking advertising. But if you hit it right, you can make a lot of abundance and money in it. But so I got set up with a freelance gig that lasted 13 or 14 months at that rate. And I literally was working less and making more. I was hired because of my authentic self, and didn't mean I wasn't working hard. And yes, I was working 40 hours a week, but the stress of it was different. And just the vibe and what I was doing was not as like frenetic.
Right.
And also I was doing it at home, talking to no one, because it was COVID. So maybe it also felt less stressful because you're just by yourself. Sure. But I know that was a lot of me talking, but it was just, I really wanted to get that story and that big financial gift, and how that springboarded, because that was the first time my life physically was different. It was about 9 months after I started doing the work. And then about a year later, I went from, I think I left New York City making $86,000 or $85,000. And I don't even know what that is hourly, but I'm being very blunt with my numbers, and this is weird for me too, just so you know, because like saying it to me, from me to you, is one thing as a friend, and then me being like, whoever ever listens to this, even if they know me, they're like, what? So I thank you, because it's medicine for me too, to kind of walk the talk, right? So about a year later, I was making that hourly rate. That was just kind of we'll get into the next chapter of that, but that would really shifted my life for sure.
Yeah. And I just wanted to like recap a couple of things. So first of all, just if you guys are like really paying attention to the timelines of this, it's interesting when you're going through the journey yourself. I don't know why it just feels like it's taking forever, because you're there, right? You're there, you're in the moment with yourself, and you're just like thinking this is going to be this long drawn out process. But my experience as well is that, 9 months to a year, that's actually like a pretty quick shift, in my opinion, to change something in our consciousness and then witness it be reflected back in our reality. And going back to some of the maybe more esoteric part of this was that the internal work was done for you to no longer resonate with holding debt. And I
Mm-hmm.
want that to like really land for people. It's something I'm still working on with myself, because essentially debt is just energy. It's our abundance being held on the outside of us. It's our wealth being held by somebody else because we've placed our point of power on the external. So that's a whole other topic. But essentially what you did was you reorganized and recalibrated
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
your energetic output. And like you said, the universe is so indifferent. It's like looking for all the ways it can possibly make that a reality, just to show you that you are the creator,
Yes.
just bring that evidence. So the fact that it all lined up that way, to me, is just such a miracle that
Mm-hmm.
that can even happen. Like, thank you for being
Yeah.
such an expander to myself and everybody who's listening, that if you do the work and you no
Mm-hmm.
longer vibrate and resonate with a certain experience, that it can just be plucked and removed like very, very quickly. And I've had similar experiences like that. And then the other piece that, yes, really thank you so much for this conscious conversation, because part of that is the honesty, and it is the truth,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the speaking of the numbers. And I know not everybody's comfortable with it, but it was something that was so painful to me growing up, because I never had anybody sharing that data with me. And so I felt very lost and very confused. And like when you met me 3 years ago, I thought I was worth $10 an hour, because
Yeah.
that's how unlike connected I was to my value and to my worth, simply because there was no conscious conversations happening around this topic. And then,
Mm-hmm.
oh boy, that's come like, I don't know, multiplied by however many times to such
Yeah.
a different reality, simply because I saw myself differently. So that's what I want to thank you for, is being that transparent and that willing to share, because those numbers absolutely matter. We don't know what we're worth. Most of us have no idea. Um, and speaking it with so much ease and so much grace and like
Yeah.
no shame or guilt or fear or anything is so empowering. And for any of you who can't quite do the math, I think it ended up being like $250,000 in earnings for that year,
Mm-hmm.
something around there. And
Yeah.
I totally,
Gross.
and I just remember you
Yeah.
sharing that information with me, like hoping it didn't trigger me. And like I said, like I shared at the intro, that was
Mm-hmm.
literally maybe one of the coolest things I'd ever heard
Mm-hmm.
in my life. I'm thinking, I actually know somebody who is commanding that in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it just exploded my mind
Mm-hmm.
to what was possible. And then, as we'll, probably wrap up towards the end,
Mm-hmm.
talking about the cyclical nature of
Yeah.
money. It's just like everything else, like nature,
Mm-hmm.
it breathes in and out, and there's ups and downs. And so I know that both of us have had that experience of like the trajectory going up and then maybe plateauing and then maybe coming back down, and just
Mm-hmm.
riding that wave with trust that
Yeah.
it's okay, and also using it as
Mm-hmm.
information and data for us to just work out the next piece of the puzzle for our
Yes.
self-worth. So you guys, whoever's listening to this, my hope is that the word money, the energy of money, becomes a source of pleasure for you at some point in the journey, because I know for most of us it's been a source of pain. So however long that transition takes, and not that it's always pleasurable for both Nicole and I, there's still lots of opportunities
Mm-hmm.
for pain, but the tolerance of that journey seems to strengthen our ability to create. So I know we'll get into this next phase of what life has been like since creating all of that, and then maybe getting to your plateau moment and just sharing with
Mm-hmm.
everybody kind of what that looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this was all kind of happening during COVID. So it was really weird. Like one part of my life was really expanding, even though I felt like all of us felt like our whole world was like constricted. And mind you, I just want to mention my experience in New York was all about survival. So when I was talking about like money habits and money health, I didn't have any of that in New York because I don't even feel like I had the option to
Right.
budget or do that. Seattle, I was budgeting and saving and, learning to invest. Well, but still not fully owning it, but definitely more, but not, I guess, in full confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I started to find myself just being in this freelance position, it was a lot of money. It's like grossing $20,000 a month. And then you have to educate yourself on like taxes and paying yourself and like saving, because you don't know in freelance world when you might not work, and you got to buffer and
Yeah.
how you should invest in all of this stuff. And so, and this was when like crypto was coming in the mainstream, and it was like 2020 and all this stuff, and gold and silver and all these different types of narratives were happening in the world at that time with COVID. And so I was trying to make these decisions to warrior up and make these decisions that made sense to me, even though there was still like definite layers of that I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was at least trying.
Yeah.
So there's no right or wrong, but
Yeah.
I would still just encourage people to find people that you resonate with on social or in real life, and just ask them questions about financial health and literacy, because it really makes an impact. And I am still learning it. And you'll see how I'm kind of in this next part. So fast forward, I have a 14-month gig. I make a nice chunk of change. I am saving it and investing it in different things. And then I was asked, or I was told that that freelance position is no longer available. Would I be open to a full-time job? And Kat, you're here for this. I had such a hard time. There was fear on the other side of like, okay, I'm not going to have a freelance job. I didn't even think about like living off of my earnings. Like I was still in the fear of, well, what if I don't, when's the next time I'm going to get a job? Because I didn't practice the freelance life that much, because I was lucky in the sense that I had it was like I had a full-time job for 14 months because I was always there. And I wasn't willing to go back into the discomfort of the unknown of where my next paycheck was going to come from. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And so I made a decision to go back into full time. And I think, and in doing so, I lost over $100,000 of income, for an annual salary.
Yeah.
And which is also okay.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think one of my biggest takeaways, because I was making that amount of money, I didn't have the intentional energy, like energetics of maybe like clear intentional dreams for the universe of like where this money is go, why I'm calling it in, and how I want to use it. And I want this to be saved. I want this to be invested. I am in control. I'm empowered. I've got this. I can receive this amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was like, I was scared and intimidated by this amount of money. I had my dad, who's more traditional in how he, invests and does all that. It's a little bit old school. And then I have my side of things, which is definitely not traditional. And I just couldn't find that balance. And I didn't have the right resources that really kind of were speaking my exact language. And so I've fumbled around a little bit. And then I couldn't hold that frequency or that amount of money anymore. And so that came in form of taking the full-time job. And I think that's a really important thing to pause on, because I created it, but I couldn't hold it. And And, and I still have had to, or in that process have had to go through my own, I don't want to say shame, but just kind of like heal through that, because and give myself compassion, because that's and oh my God, guys, I know. Oh, boo hoo, Nicole, you couldn't hold 200,000. I'm not even saying that. I don't care if it was going from $10 a month to $1,000 a month. I couldn't have the stability to hold that amount. So I think that's also another important lesson in abundance. And when we are rising our frequencies and our around that, and in our worthiness and our stuff, there's a lot of financial health stuff that goes along to support that. And I know you're going through working on that a little bit. I don't know, actually, if you want to, I would love for you to build on that part before I kind of finish this up, because it's really important.
I agree. So essentially what it breaks down to, at least in my experience, is I'm finding again that money is just a mirror. It's just a tool. And what are our actual values? Mm-hmm. And so looking at your experience, what I find so fascinating is that you it's like the universe opened up to you and kind of forced you into an unstable situation. And, you're a manifester by human design. So, oh my gosh, you guys, when this girl wants to manifest something, it's like, out of the ethers it appears, and it's so fun to watch. But I watched her, I think we met about a week before that you got let go.
That got laid off
your job. And then I watched that whole process, and then literally you speaking those words of what you wanted to create, and then it appeared, and I just was like, wow, this is so fun to watch and witness. And I think from my perspective, the only thing that changed was that all of a sudden you were given another like fork in the road of a decision to be made. And there's something really valuable about a peaceful nervous system. This is something that I'm really, really radically changing my life around right now, because I know that maybe in your perception, you're seeing yourself as that you weren't able to hold it. But in some ways, I think that what you did was you made a decision that was in alignment with your well-being, and that you were no longer you were just no longer wanting to tolerate the fear that comes along with like building the faith muscle, because there is that aspect. And unless we really are very like fine-tuned with how to self-regulate, man, is it a big cost. So that's kind of how I saw your story differently than maybe how you saw it, was that you were making a very aligned decision that was in your best interest. And will you recreate that $250,000 a year? Absolutely. Will you create $1 million a year? Absolutely. Like, that's very clear to me that you're going to align with so much more. And that part of your journey was to go through the ups and the downs so that you can start fine-tuning and like focusing in on the dials of what you value. And so that's kind of what my takeaway is with my own ups and downs, because they've been so extreme and so quick and so dramatic that, like you said, sometimes these changes happen so quickly, we don't have the education to know the first thing of how to responsibly handle something. So then what do? You default to whoever you are, and then you get to see yourself, you get to witness how it all plays out. And you guys, numbers are so transient, like they're going to fluctuate no matter what. I mean, I've yet to meet somebody who has like ever felt like they're at that place where they've made it. And I watch a lot of content around this topic because I find it fascinating that there's people that have $6 million in the bank and they still have fear and they still don't sleep at night. So this is much more a journey of our internal experience and our values, and aligning with that, and then just using money as a way to check in with ourselves and as a way to create. So, and to share and to take care of ourselves and to take care of others. And so I feel like you and I have had such great results However, we're still at like kindergarten. We're still like at a super baby level.
Yes.
How exciting, because there's so much more to unravel and there's so much more to explore. And I'm like, I feel like we've arrived at the starting line, and what a cooler place to know that we're going to live out the rest of our life exploring this amazing topic. Because you think of abundance and prosperity, and what is it? It is creation itself. So of
Yes.
course it's fascinating. Of course we love it. It lights a fire inside of me, as I'm guessing it does to you and anybody else who's listening to this, because there is a reason that we are here right now having this conversation that is going to be broadcasted over the airwaves. It's going to reach whoever it's meant to reach, because all of us have a very similar soul mission, which is to shift consciousness into prosperity consciousness for so many reasons. The number one being getting people out of survival. And, the reason that's so important is until you're out of survival, you don't even have a chance to access your frontal cortex, which is your creative mind, which is the part of you that came here to create and offer your gift to the world. You simply won't have access to it until you can get out of that survival state. So that's another reason that I'm super passionate about this podcast and these episodes, is even if it's like turning the dial just a tiny bit every time that you listen in on a conversation, if one little piece changes, and then you find yourself in a new place next month, 6 months, a year from now, 5 years from now, I think you're going to be incredibly surprised at, one, how powerful you are, and two, at how fun this experience can be, and how fun the community can be around taking this on and seeing what we can create, and seeing like, oh my gosh, can you even imagine the amount of geniuses and entrepreneurs that are going to start showing up and really solving serious issues that we're facing right now. And like, what's on my heart is, how can these conversations start to set more and more people free, literally to be set free from anything that is draining their life force and taking up their precious time and their gifts, and like keeping them from their calling. And I'll share more of this in coming episodes, but I personally got set free recently, and my whole universe has changed, because all of a sudden it clicked that, we're chasing the wrong thing here. We're chasing this thing called money. And it just clicked. Oh my gosh, money is just the symptom of a way of thinking and our values. And anyways, for me, it became very, very clear the value of setting myself free and helping to set others free, so that we can absolutely step into what it is that we signed up for when we took this avatar body and we took this life, because we sure did it for a reason. And the fact that we're here having this conscious conversation about it, oh gosh, a few years ago, I couldn't have even imagined at all. And so I'll kind of like let you come back and share any key takeaways from any of that, and kind of just wrapping up your story to like the next chapter. But mostly like, what can you leave the audience with to start to change their tune and start to resonate differently with this topic, even if it's just a little bit more peace of knowing that this is a game that they can play and that they can have support with.
Yes, I would love to, because when you were talking, so many things were coming in, and one of them, I wanted to go back and just like make it very clear that, yes, there was fear when I got laid off, and anybody when you don't have a job or you're let go or fired, that's just a redirect for the universe. And so like the universe will keep having your back, and don't I don't want to say don't, because it is okay to have human emotions and
Yeah.
experiences and go through that process. But sometimes a no or certain is just a divine redirect, and just there's something on the other side. And one thing that Kyle Cease says that I really sometimes I'm like, Kyle, because he's so right about it when I still get in my own way. He's like, the reason why it's hard to let go of something is because you can only measure what you'll lose. You can't measure what you'll gain. And so a lot of us are scared to let go of a comfortable job or a whatever, or a job that you love, but you know that you love the people, you love what you do, but you know you could be making 3 times the amount or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You don't want to disappoint people.
Right.
You can measure what you can lose, but if you just like create that space, and that's where the faith and the surrender walk, and just like you don't know what's on the other side, but like it's going to be more like, not even like, I'm not saying like more money, but it's going to be more like more fulfilling, more in alignment to your dharma, to your path, more expansive than what you're doing now. And there's pain in that, and that's okay. But I encourage people lovingly to say yes how you can, because I really appreciate your reflections, Kat, because also there is this balance I think that is important to have, because I really honor people who jump without a parachute and are just in it for the trust fall. And seriously, I that's amazing. And you know what? Most of the time it works out really well. And I just wasn't able to do that. So thank you for reflecting. So I'll say it has been, because I still have a full-time job. So it has been 2 years since I've gotten back into salary life force, job force. And it has been supportive for my nervous system as I've healed and expanded in other ways. And it's funny because it's like, I want to mention that, you know, it's not a like trajectory rocket ship. It's going to be kind of like we said, like this, maybe plateau, maybe go down, but it's like the stock market of like, it's going to trend up, but it's not going to be a straight line. And so sometimes like right now I've had financial hate. It's not stability, but perceiving wise, yes, because it's a full time, because I've been working on other parts of my life or receiving or expanding in other ways. And that has been helping me grow and get clarity on what I do value and how I do want to continue to use money as a tool. So wanted to share those reflections. And, you know, if you've had any whispers, just literally start listening to 10, 20 minutes of something a day and just see where that takes you. Tell the universe, what would it take for me to feel more free? What would it take for me to, meet someone that could help me with my financial health? Like just be open. So I would just encourage people to find those small moments. I would say just start with little things and just give yourself grace, and the right people are going to come in your path. And we are, one of my favorite quotes that I'm using with a friend right now, it's really sweet to me, is it's a Ram Dass quote. We're all just walking each other home. And I believe that we are, especially during this time of awakening, through these podcasts, through these conscious conversations. I love every single person that I have never met yet, you know? And I hope this helps. And I can't wait to be inspired by you and your other guests and other people that I will never meet, but they impact me. So we're definitely all in this together.
Yes. So perfect and so well said, and perfect spinoff to kind of what the bigger picture is. So the company I own is Envisioneer Studios, and there's going to be some different layers to that. But the one that I'm working on with the podcast is the Dream into Being. And I actually spent all of last year, as you know, in beta phase, just testing out all these different ways to host experiments and community events, and kind of like cherry picking and getting to know myself of how I like to serve. And the beginning of this year, my life was just all about getting super simple and managing my energy properly so that I really could just figure out what was the one thing for me to put my energy into. And so I know for right now that it's definitely the podcast, and then in the future will be live events and or online events and community building. And part of that along that journey is the invitation to all of you out there, all of the listeners, because I think what's so magical about what's being created here is like the synchronicity of there's a lot of us that have been kind of in the in between of like letting the old go and moving into the new experience of life, but we're still growing our wings, we're still stretching, we're still exploring. But that space is so potent and it's so powerful. And it seems to be easier to relate to somebody in that space versus somebody that's at the top of the mountain yelling down like what's possible. And so that's one of the intentions of the show, is to start to create and collect more people in that space sharing their story. And so if any of you out there that are listening have a transformation story of in your abundance, your own personal abundance experiment, and would like to come on and be a guest on the show, I would absolutely love to have you on. And I'm making this really, really easy. I know not everybody likes being on camera or even wants their name out there. So I'm kind of giving a bunch of different options. If you want to be on camera and use your name, great. Or if you want to be off camera and do audio only and use a fake name, no problem. That part doesn't matter to me. It's more getting our stories out there, flooding the airwaves with these conscious conversations and creating networks. And, you know, maybe we'll do like some monthly Zoom calls to start getting to know each other or something. I'm not exactly sure where that's going to go quite yet, but I'm super fascinated by starting to really focus my own energy in. And, you know, I know my story, I know Nicole's story and a handful of other people's, but I would love to have just vast access to like case studies of all kinds of people in different places in their life. And I mean, it could be a transformation story about manifestation. It could be about connection, like, you know, creating your soulmate relationship, life partner. It could be a healing experiment of, you know, that's something that I'm personally going through as well. It could be the kindness experiment if you've created a charity organization and you want to share that story. I think, and then, or it's if you're a creator and you're an entrepreneur and you want to share that story of going through the transformation, I would absolutely love to have you on and share your story with the world, because it matters. It's absolutely, to me, if I could pick one thing that has consistently changed my life, it has been immersion with seeing myself in others and having community around me to support it. And so the value and the power of that is so tremendous that that's where all of my energy is going to go, into creating more and more opportunities for all of us to share and connect. So thank you so much, Nicole, for being my number one, my first guest in this adventure. And
thank you so much.
Of course, it makes so much sense because, yeah, I mean, again, 3 years ago, I was in such a different place, and the universe just connected us at the absolute right timing for both of our lives to just, you know, go on this next adventure together. So I know there's going to be many more.
Grateful. Yes.
And I'm sure we'll have lots of requests to have you back on the show because I think one of your gifts is authenticity and vulnerability and transparency. And it's such a gift. And you have this magical ability to validate others in their experience, because that's really the only thing that matters. Is us trusting ourselves that we are having an experience and that we are validated in it. And so that's such a gift that you offer to me and
Thank
to
you.
everyone. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here, but I wanted to give you a moment if you have any last words of inspiration to our audience today.
I will just say, if you can give yourself permission to be exactly where you are in this now moment, because there's medicine in that, even if it is you're in victim mode. May this, if at anything you're not ready to hear anything beyond that, that is okay, because we have planted that seed of love and it will come alive, when it's ready. And keep asking, keep looking for those expanders in your life. Look at who you're surrounding yourself with. What are you consuming? It is all totally possible for every single one of us. And if you are called to come on this podcast, I would encourage you to also be a seed planter.
Yes.
And it is, and again, just whatever's comfort, because there's billions and billions and billions of people on this earth, and Kat's podcast can't reach them all. My story can't reach them all, but like, that is why we all need to collectively come together and share our story, because that is also how we find our soul family. It's like literally an audible beacon of frequency that's going out into the airways, and like the right people like catch that wave and are like, oh, there you are. I've been waiting for you for the last, 20 years, 30 years, 15 years, whatever, my whole life. Yes. And so please, we owe it to each other, because I read this, like, it is kind of a disservice to others when we don't speak our own truth. And I am so, Kat, saying this to myself, because that is something I'm still working on. So thank you for the opportunity for me to step outside of my comfort zone and use my voice, use my truth. And thank you. I love you. It's been so cool to see you the last 3 years go from how I met you to this. You used to be on all on me about a podcast, and I'm slowly getting my act together with that. And here you are, like, you're doing it. And I'm like, yes, like, you are so powerful. And I'm so grateful that I sent you this the other day, that the universe conspired for me to put us in each other's lives. And very grateful. And I love you. And thank you so much. Yes. And congratulations on your podcast.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, just another seed to plant to all of you that are listening out there. I think that's actually the bigger, my heart's desire is like, yeah, okay, great, Kat, do your thing, create abundance, whatever. Like, that's not the end of the story for me. The end of the story for me is to offer support and encouragement and community and anything I possibly have to give to get more and more of us to say yes to this call. Like, I want tens and thousands of us that have been maybe on the sidelines for a while to start stepping into the arena and doing it together. Like, it doesn't have to be scary. Like, can you even imagine us doing this 3 years ago was like not even a thought. Yeah. And here we are today. It feels like normal life. So just to encourage all of you out there, if it is something that has been on your heart, knowing that there will be some form of community and support as we go along to help create that. Because again, the vision that I got was the key to creating this new reality that we're all so desperately seeking and connected to. The most powerful way to do that is to flood the airwaves with conscious conversation. So you know who you are. If you're listening to this and something in you is earthquaking right now, this message is for you, and that you won't be alone, and that you'll have so much love and so much support. You'll actually be the opposite of alone. And that's what I'm just absolutely the most excited for. And man, I'm telling you, my entire life is reorganizing itself to make me available.
Yes, it is.
To step into this right now. And I'm so committed and I'm so excited. So Again, thank you so much, Nicole, for being my first passenger on this ride. And I know many, many more to come. Sending you all so much love out there. And I will leave my email in the description box. So if you want to reach out and book a time to come in on the show and be interviewed, you can reach me there. Otherwise, sending you all so much love and abundance and blessings and prosperity. And hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.
We love you.